We have with us Mrs. Harriet Pilpel, who's well known to this viewers of this program. Mrs. Pilpel is an attorney with Greenbaum, Wolf and Ernst, a graduate of Vassar and of the Columbia Law School, and very active in a number of liberal and feminist movements. Mrs. Pilpel.
There are, as you said, many blacks today who are still being given totally inadequate education, yes, cannot be expected to get very far for that reason. What would be your remedy for that?
I know.
That's very easy. I would allow their parents to have a choice of where to send them to school, whether that choice is called a voucher scheme, open enrollment, tuition tax credit, any kind of scheme of that sort that would put that power in the hands of their parents, mainly because that would mean that the schools would have to be responsive to them. As it is now, the school is a monopoly. They need not be responsive. I have relatives right here in New York whom I've had to intervene for because the schools would not even treat them decently, much less give them access to the information they wanted that they were entitled to under the law.
If you put it in the hands of the parents, and the parents are themselves uneducated, mm-hmm, and not really aware of what the various potentials are, what makes you think that they would decide more intelligently than the present system?
I think, again, history. As blacks emerged from slavery, a minute percentage could read or write, and yet in half a century, over half the black population was literate. An economic historian has called that one of the most remarkable things in history. If you look back to the era prior to the Civil War, when there were free blacks about 500,000 in the United States, they not only were not allowed in the public schools, they were in some states forbidden even to send their children to private schools and had to do so clandestinely. And yet the census of 1850 showed that most free blacks could read and write. So I don't think that the fact that people have little education means that they are in any way poorer judges than distant bureaucrats who have their own axes to grind in running the public school system.
But you yourself said that you thought one of the reasons why blacks were still in an underprivileged position, those who still are, was because they had not been given a proper education.
Yes.
And we are now talking about people who had not been given a proper education, making decisions for their children as to what is a proper education. And you're saying that if that was put up to them, mm-hmm, they would make a wiser choice than the present efforts to integrate the schools.
Let me say that if they would not make a very different choice, it would be hard to understand the hysterical opposition of teachers' unions to giving them that opportunity.
Well,
I have no comment on that, but I would like to know how Bill feels about improving educational opportunities.
I believe with Dr. Sowell that the voucher system obviously encourages parents to use the same kind of selectivity that's available to parents who have enough money to send their children to private schools, and that to give a versatility of choice, a flexibility of choice to parents of poor children, the same versatility that is given to parents of wealthier children is obviously desirable.
And you think that their ability to make the decision is equal?
No, but I think it may be equal, it may be less equal, it may be more equal. I think that the phenomenon of the poor and uneducated parent who seeks for his or her children what he himself has never achieved for himself is much more commonplace.
Oh God, yes.
Than the kind of sated, self-satisfied parent who typically neglects the education of his child.
I think you'd have very few blacks who finished college, including myself, if they had to have college-educated parents to send them there. There was no one in my family that went to college before me, and among the blacks that I know of my generation, I would say that's the rule rather than the exception.
My son, the doctor syndrome.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that insofar as your own experience is concerned, you are clearly an exceptional person. And it is somewhat reminiscent of what the Minister for Women's Affairs said in France when she was asked whether there was going to continue to be a Ministry of Women's Affairs now that women had achieved such great strides forward. Her answer was, as long as the average woman does not have the same opportunities as the average man, we need to have a government office which will try to get them some sort of equal opportunity.
But it's precisely the government which is denying it in this case. It's the government which has been running these schools from which the kids graduate semi-literate. And for years, black parents have been sending their kids, not just me, but a whole generation of blacks, to college, to high school, whatever. If you look at the history of black education in the United States, that has been largely, at the beginning, an effort by the blacks themselves. It was 1916 before there were as many blacks attending public high school as were attending private high schools. So there's a very long history of blacks trying to get their kids educated. I might say from my experience, again, not my own story, but at black colleges, the parents who work nights and fathers drive cabs and mothers who scrub floors to see that their kid gets an education. If there weren't such people, you wouldn't see half as many blacks with college degrees today.
And they're beating down the doors of Catholic parochial schools, even non-Catholic blacks, to get in there.
Yes.
What percentage would you say of the total number of blacks were in private schools or beating down the doors of parochial schools? Would it not be a considerably less than half percentage?
That's right, because they don't have the money. And you could have made exactly the same argument against the GI Bill, that why should you have a GI Bill for people to go to college when only the rich go to college? Well, the reason the rich were the only ones going to college at that time was because there was no GI Bill. The whole point of this is to put this choice within their hands. It is hard for me to understand what harm is going to be done by allowing parents to have a choice as compared to having self-interested bureaucrats have a monopoly.